Hello, my dear students. Today I'm going to talk about an important competency given in your UG curriculum, which is P5 1.8. Describe and discuss the molecular basis of resting membrane potential and action potential in excitable tissue. Here we will discuss the what is resting membrane potential and what is action potential and what are its molecular bases. So, what are the SLOs or the specific learning objective of this session or lecture? At the end of the session, phase 1 MBBS students should be able to revise the Nerner's potential or equilibrium potential. This Nerner's potential we have already discussed during my previous lectures in the class and hope you all remember it. We'll be again revising that concept. Second is that the student should be able to explain the diffusion potential of a membrane when it is permeable to multiple ions based on Goldman-Hodgkin-Katz equation. So here we will try to find out what is the membrane potential of a membrane when it is permeable to a multiple ions or there is diffusion of multiple ions, and this will be using with the explanation of with the help of the Goldman-Hodgkin-Katz equation. Third SLOs will be, that is PY 1.8.3 will be to discuss the Gibbs-Tonan equilibrium correctly. So there is another equilibrium like Nerner's potential or diffusion equilibrium. There is another equilibrium which we need to know while learning about the membrane potentials. So the fourth SLO of this competency is to correlate the importance of Donan's equilibrium in the human body. So what is the relation of or what is the importance of Donan's equilibrium in the human body? What is its application in the human body? Where it is applicable and how it is causing changes in the human body. Then the fifth SLO is that the student should be able to memorize the concept of membrane potential and resting membrane potential. It's not only memorizing or something you need to understand the concept of membrane potential and resting membrane potential. Then sixth SLO is you should be able to explain the molecular basis of resting membrane potential, that is why this resting membrane potential occur, what is the physiology behind this resting membrane potential. Then how he should be able to discuss the recording of an electrical potential in an excitable tissue. So how an electrical potential is recorded in an excitable tissue. This is a very important topic which you need to know and you should be able to understand it. The eighth SLO is describe in detail the different phases of action potential, that is spike potential. Now we know the molecular basis of spike potential, resting membrane potential, now membrane potential, and we should also able to know what is what is exactly action potential and what are its different phases. What are the different phases of action potential, or the common action potential is the spike potential. Then he should be able to, or he or she should be able to outline the molecular basis of different components of action potential or spike potential. What are the basis of? So there are different phases in action potential. The typical action potential is called as spike potential. So that is why we should be able to, if you know the molecular basis of this, you will be easily able to know the molecular basis of different types of action potential. Then you should be able to know the enumerate different types of action potentials correctly. What are different types of action potentials which are recorded in the body or which occur in your body, and then finally explain different type of action potentials accurately. In this lecture I'll not be going into different types of action potential. My focus will be only on the commonest action potential, that is spike potential. Then while you study the nerve, you study muscle, you study cardiac muscle, you'll be able to study the different types of action potential as you study different systems. So now coming to membrane potentials. So almost all the cells have membrane potentials. That is, the living cells have the membrane potential. Now the membrane potential is what? It is the potential difference across the living cell membrane which exists due to difference between the electrical potentials of intracellular fluid and extracellular fluid. I'll repeat once again. The membrane potential is, which is represented by Vm, is the potential difference across a living cell membrane which exists, which is present due to the difference between the electrical potentials of inside the cell, which is intracellular fluid, and outside the cell, that is extracellular fluid. Now this occurs because there are different concentrations of cations and anions across the cell membrane. Moreover, this membrane potential remains constant in the living cells at rest, and what we call it as resting membrane potentials. So basically, resting membrane potential is the membrane potential, a constant membrane potential which is present in living cells at rest, that is neither not transmitting or receiving any signals. Now this membrane potential, it depends upon the concentration gradient of the different ions across the cell membrane and the selective permeability of the cell membrane to the different ions. So what I'm trying to tell you is that it is for potential difference to occur, because I'm saying this membrane potential occurs because of the potential difference. For this potential difference to occur across the cell membrane, there should be a concentration gradient, and the ions, the membrane should be permeable to these ions, these particular ions. So again I'll repeat, the constant membrane potential present in living cells, excitable or non-excitable. Excitable means nerve, muscle, and non-excitable cells. So present in the constant membrane potential at rest is known as the resting membrane potential, and there exists the membrane potential. So let's now discuss further. Equilibrium potential, we have already discussed the equilibrium potential in my lecture in your class in detail. Now, so the membrane potential, as I said in my previously, that it is because of the concentration gradient and permeability, concentration of ions and permeability of the cell membrane to different ions. So this membrane potential is caused by diffusion. So we have discussed equilibrium potential. So what is this equilibrium potential? The relation of diffusion potential to the concentration difference, as we know, is known as potential. So again repeat what is known as potential. It is the potential which is developed at the cell membrane when there is no net diffusion of that particular ion. That is, known as potential of an ion is the diffusion potential of the cell membrane when the equilibrium is reached, so that there is no net diffusion of any ion. So let us explain it further. Let us take a hypothetical situation. Let us take, this is the cell and this is the cell membrane. So there is membrane potential, inside is negative, and let us consider that there is no potential in the inside of the membrane. The membrane is permeable to potassium ions but not to the anions which are present inside the cell membrane. Now what will happen? As we know that there is a concentration gradient from inside to outside the cell, as higher concentration of potassium is present inside the cell. So potassium will start moving outside the cell along with its concentration gradient through the leak channels. After some time, when a lot of potassium is moved out, now because electrical gradient outside is positive, now this positive ion charge will start repelling the positively charged potassium, and and moreover there is an electrical gradient created outside the cell. Now some of the potassium, it starts moving back inside the cell because the electrical gradient now is more than the developed large electrical gradient is developed. So some potassium will start moving in till a particular membrane potential which is equivalent to the diffusion potential or Nernst potential of potassium, which is minus 94 millivolt, is reached. Now at this stage the membrane potential is minus 94 millivolt and there is no net diffusion of potassium ions. Now we take another hypothetical situation where the cell membrane is now permeable only to sodium ions. Now sodium ions, because of the concentration gradient, will move from outside to inside as inside. After some time because the inside becomes more positive and the positive, now these positive ions, this positivity will try to repel the sodium and now the electrical gradient is created, but it is not too much, but still the sodium will start moving out against its concentration gradient. It will start moving out till a diffusion potential of the or Nernst potential of the sodium is achieved, which is plus 61 millivolt, and then there is no net transfer of sodium ions. Here the resting membrane potential will be plus 61 millivolt. So the membrane potential is dependent on the diffusion of the different ions. Membrane potential will depend upon the diffusion of the different ions. This we were saying when the membrane is permeable to one single ion. Then the membrane potential or the resting membrane potential is depicted by the Nernst potential of that particular ion. Now in the previous slide I told you that about the importance of the diffusion potential on the resting membrane potential or the membrane potential of particular cell. Now those hypothetical situations were when a cell membrane was permeable to a single ion, but in the body you know that we have multiple ions, and the major ions in the body are univalent ions in the body are sodium, potassium and chloride. Cations are sodium and potassium and univalent anion is chloride. So these ions, these are major ions. There are many ions, but we'll talk of these many ions which are going to finally give the diffusion potential or the membrane potential of a cell membrane. So how do we calculate the diffusion potential or the cell membrane potential of the cell when we have multiple ions? This was devised by the different scientists, and depending upon the name we have the Goldman-Hodgkin-Katz equation or Goldman equation, which we also called as Goldman's constant field equation. Now this takes into consideration the diffusion potential when the membrane is permeable to multiple ions. So this equation can be given by this is that minus electromotive force, which is given in millivolt, is equal to minus 61 log of here the concentration of sodium inside multiplied by its permeability plus the concentration of potassium inside multiplied by its permeability and concentration of chloride outside multiplied by its permeability and divided by concentration of sodium outside and multiplied by its permeability plus concentration of potassium outside into its permeability plus concentration of chloride inside multiplied by its permeability. If we substitute the values of concentration outside and inside along with their permeability, we can get the diffusion potential of that particular membrane. Now if we see this equation, we see that this diffusion potential of or membrane potential of the membrane at that particular depends upon the electric charge polarity of each contributing ion. So let us take a situation. Suppose the cations are moving from inside of the cell to the outside. The inside will become more, and we know that there are multiple anions which are impermeant in the cells. So inside will become more negative and outside will become more positive. So the membrane potential becomes more negative because the positive charge cations are leaving the cells. If the reverse happens, that the cations, they move inside the shell, then inside will become, the membrane potential will be positive. If the predominant ions is positive, which is moving from outside to inside, then the membrane potential will become positive. Second, it also depends upon the membrane permeability to each contributing ion. That is the permeability we have given in the equation. We can see the permeability is very, very important. So if the cell membrane is more permeable to one particular ion, suppose it is more permeable to potassium ion, so its diffusion potential of that membrane at that particular moment will be nearer to the Nernst potential of potassium, which is minus 94 millivolts. And if it is more permeable to sodium, it is nearer to the Nernst potential of sodium. Then concentration of each contributing ion on either side of the membrane. So if there is more concentration gradient, so there will be more diffusion. So suppose the concentration gradient of sodium is more, so it will be the equation will be, the diffusion potential will be dependent upon the sodium, and same with the other ions. So these ions, the sodium and potassium and chloride, these are the major ions which are present in the cells, and especially the sodium and potassium ions, they are responsible for drastic changes to generate the action potentials or the cause alteration in membrane polarity in the excitable tissues like nerve and muscle. So they are discussed more when we discuss the Goldman-Hodgkin-Katz equation. So in the previous slide, I gave you the equation. Electromotive force in millivolts, EBMF is electromotive force in volts. These are the concentration of sodium inside and outside the membrane. This is concentration of potassium inside and outside the membrane. This is concentration of chloride inside and outside the membrane. And this PNA, PK and P chloride are the permeability of membrane to sodium, potassium and chloride respectively. Now, during the introduction of the topic and during discussing the SLOs, I said that there is another very important equilibrium which is known as Gibbs-Dunant equilibrium. So what is it? Let us first understand what is it. It is an equilibrium set up across a semi-permeable membrane in the presence of non-diffusible ions on one side of the membrane, when the diffusible ions redistribute themselves in such a way that their concentrations and ratios are equal. I'll again repeat. It is an equilibrium set up across a semi-permeable membrane in the presence of non-diffusible ions on one side of the membrane, when the diffusible ions redistribute themselves in such a way that their concentrations and ratios are equal. So basically, because of this, there is unequal distribution of diffusible. So I said it is an equilibrium set up across a semi-permeable membrane. Let us take a situation. This is a cell. When there is a cell membrane which separates two solutions, or one side there is a solution A or side A, another side is solution B or side B. Inside solution A, it has 3 cations which are 3 sodium ions and 3 anions which are 3 proteins. And on side B, there are 3 sodium ions or cations and 3 anions which are the chloride ions. Because after some time, what happens that these proteins, they are impermeate, but the sodium and chloride, they are diffusible. Proteins are non-diffusible. So what happens after some time, these diffusible ions, that is sodium and chloride, they redistribute themselves in such a way that their concentrations and ratios are equal. So here an equilibrium will set up when there is no net transfer of ions, but here what is happening, there is a presence of non-diffusible ions, proteins on one side, depending upon which the diffusible ions have redistributed themselves in such a way now that their concentrations and ratios are equal. Let me explain one by one. Here the solutions are electrically neutral. The total charge on cations will be equal to total charge on anions, that is, electrically the solutions will be neutral. So cations of side A and cations on side anions of side A will be equal and anions of side A will be equal, let me explain once again. The cations of side A will be equal to the anions of side A, and cations of side B will be equal to anions of side B. So let me explain like this. So how many cations are there on side A? 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 cations, and these 4 cations are 4 sodium ions. And how many anions on side A? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 anions. Out of these, 3 are protein, 1, 2, 3, and 1 is chloride. So 3 proteins and 1 chloride. Together there are 4 anions. So they are equal. And on side B, we have 2 cations, 1, 2, and these are sodium ions. And we have 2 cations, 1 and 2. We have 2 anions, 1 and 2, and these are chloride ions. So here the cations on side A, that is 4, is equal to anions on side A, that is 4, and cations on side B are equal to, that is 2, is equal to anions on side B. So they have arranged in themselves in such a way that their concentrations are equal. Now, the product of the diffusible ions on one side is equal to the product of diffusible ions on the other side, and same is true for their ratios. That is, the ratios will also be equal. So I again repeat, the product of the diffusible ions on one side is equal to the product of diffusible ions on the other side, and same is true for the ratios. That is, the product of diffusible cations on side A is equal to the product of diffusible anions on side B. So let us talk of this. So this is how many cations? 4 cations here, then 4 sodium and multiplied by 1 chloride. How many? Diffusible ion. So 4 into 1 is 4, and here we have 2 sodium and 2 chloride. 2 into 2, 4. So their products are equal. And same is case with the ratios. 4 sodium cations on side A divided by 2 cations on side B. 2 chloride anions on side B divided by 2 chloride anions on side A. We take this chloride this side. So 4 by 2, 2 by 1, 2 is to 2. So the ratios are also equal. Am I clear about this? So they have arranged in themselves that the product of the diffusible ions on one side is equal to product of diffusible ions on the other side as. So why we want to know this Donan's equilibrium? Because there are certain situations in the body when you are studying the systemic physiology, you'll come to know that the arrangement or the redistribution of anions or proteins can be explained by other ways. So it can be explained depending upon the Donan's equilibrium. The intracellular proteins, which are impermeate, they attract osmotically active positive ions, and which is the commonest ions it will attract? It will attract the sodium ions. So when sodium ions move, they are osmotically active, they will move along, water will also will, so the cells will swell because of this Donan's equilibrium. But sodium potassium pump comes to the rescue, and it pushes out 3 sodium ions and 2 potassium ions inside. So this leads to the maintaining the cell volume. Then distribution of diffusible ions is asymmetric at equilibrium, maintaining an electrical difference across the membranes. It will maintain the electrical difference across the membranes because of this redistribution of diffusible ions. So there is a gradient created. This gradient leads to development of electrical differences across the membranes. Then more proteins in plasma, because the plasma proteins are more, they will exert a Donan effect on ion movement across the capillary wall, and then they will cause the inward movement of the ions and along with certain other osmotically active substances or other substances. Okay. Now coming to resting membrane potential, I said that the constant membrane potential which is present in all the cells at rest. So I again repeat, there is another way to explain the resting membrane potential. What is it? It is the potential difference across a cell membrane so that the inside is relatively negatively charged as compared to outside when the cell is at rest. That is, it's neither transmitting nor receiving any signals. I again repeat, the potential difference across a cell membrane so that the inside is relatively negative, the outside is considered 0, outside potential is considered 0, inside is relatively negatively charged as compared to the outside when the cell is rest, that is, it's neither transmitting nor receiving any signals. At this particular situation or this membrane potential, there is no net transfer of ions. So this is inside is negative, outside is positive. So the membrane is considered to be polarized. Membrane is considered to be polarized. Now this resting membrane potential, which is given by resting Vm, it varies. It can vary from minus 10 millivolt in an erythrocyte to minus 90 millivolt in a large skeletal muscle cells, or in neurons it can vary from minus 60 to minus 90 millivolts with an average of minus 70, and large myelinated nerve fibers it is minus 90 millivolts. So there is different values are given. For neurons it can range from minus 60 to minus 90. For skeletal muscle minus 85 to minus 95 millivolts. Smooth muscle minus 50 to minus 60 millivolts. Cardiac muscle minus 50 to minus 90 depending on the type of the cardiac muscle. Hair cells of cochlea minus 15 to minus 14 millivolts. Then astrocytes in the brain minus 80 to minus 90 millivolts. Photoreceptors minus 40 in the dark situation to minus 70 in the light situation. So these are multiple. There are multiple different resting membrane potentials depending upon the type of the cell. Now what is the molecular basis of resting membrane potential? So there are main three things: potassium diffusion potential, sodium diffusion potential, and sodium potassium pump. Now this sodium potassium pump I have written at the third place. So when we give the numbering to a particular thing, like here I have written potassium diffusion potential at the first, it means that it has more role to play in the resting membrane potential. Then the second comes the sodium diffusion potential and sodium potassium pump. So when we write 1, 2, 3, it means sometimes it basically we want to tell you that the first one has the major contribution, second one slightly lesser, and the third one the least. So it's not that you can alter this numbering. It's very, very important that why do we need to number this way. Now I said that resting membrane potential is dependent upon potassium diffusion potential. We have discussed in this lecture that this Nerner's potential can be derived by the electromotive force, this plus minus 61 millivolt we can say. So depending upon the electric charge on the ion, so here it will be minus 61 by its concentration. So the outside inside concentration it is 35, then the log of this is 1.54 and it comes to minus 94 millivolt. I will not go how to derive it, we have already discussed this. So and the same is case with the sodium diffusion potential. The diffusion potential of the sodium is plus 61 millivolt. Now in the cell membrane there are multiple leak channels present, which are mainly potassium leaking channels, which are called as tandem pore domain. They are selectively permeable to potassium, and some amount of permeability towards sodium is also there. So they are also known as potassium sodium leak channels, but mainly they are potassium leak channels. So cell membrane is about 50 to 100 times more permeable to potassium as compared to sodium. So let us take this situation in a cell membrane. This cell, let us say this cell membrane, it has only potassium leak channels, and these channels are permeable only to potassium. So now depending upon this, the resting membrane potential of the cell membrane should be minus 94 millivolts, because it is the Nerner's potential of the potassium. Now we know that the large myelinated nerve fiber or large skeletal nerve fiber, skeletal muscle fiber, has the resting membrane potential about minus 90 millivolt. So, but this is minus 94 millivolt. Now, let us take that this cell membrane now becomes permeable to sodium also, and now because of its sodium diffusion potential, the both sodium diffusion potential and potassium diffusion potential both are contributing to development of the membrane potential at that particular moment, and at minus 86 millivolt there is no net transfer of any ions. So see, this membrane potential, now the resting membrane potential should be minus 86 millivolt, and it is more nearer to the potassium diffusion potential. It means that there is major contribution is by the potassium diffusion potential as compared to sodium diffusion potential. But again we know that the larger myelinated nerve fibers or the large skeletal muscle fibers, they have a resting membrane potential of minus 90 millivolts. Now the rest of minus 4 millivolt is being contributed by the sodium potassium pump. This sodium potassium pump will do what? It will move 3 sodium out and 2 potassium ions in, and will add to minus 4 millivolt, and what we get is minus 90 millivolt. Now am I clear that minus 86 millivolt is being contributed by potassium diffusion potential and sodium diffusion potential, with major contribution of potassium diffusion potential because it's more nearer to the potassium diffusion potential, and minus 4 millivolt is being contributed by the sodium potassium pump. Now another important thing we should know is that how we record the membrane potentials and action potentials. I'll not go in much of the detail, but what is important for you, I'll just keep more focus on that. So why do we need to understand this? Because the cellular events in excitable cells are very rapid. They occur in milliseconds, and the potential changes what we record in very small, especially in the nerve fibers, it occurs in millivolts. So we need the instruments which can require the minor potential changes, like, so we need microelectrodes, and then we need to amplify these signals so that we can record them. So we have electronic amplifiers for that, and finally the recording is done in the cathode ray oscilloscope. That is, the recording is done after using the microelectrodes to pick up the changes. We amplify it with electronic amplifiers and record in a cathode ray oscilloscope. There are two ways to record it. Either we go for extracellular recording, which records the biphasic action potential, or we can go for intracellular recording, which records the monophasic action potential. So how do we do this? We'll come. So in the extracellular recording, we have two surface electrodes. Here we have two surface electrodes. The microelectrodes or the electrodes are placed on the surface of the nerve or fiber. Here we record from the whole nerve trunk. So both the electrodes are placed outside. Here we can see both the electrodes are placed on the outside surface of the nerve fiber, and here then they are connected to a cathode ray oscilloscope. So I'm not showing here cathode ray oscilloscope, I'm showing this just the deflections here. So in the first situation, when the nerve is stimulated, when there is no stimulation of the nerve, the two electrodes, one is placed here and another is placed here. In this particular situation, when the nerve is stimulated, here what we record is the isoelectric line, because both the electrodes, they are in neutral here. They are recording the same voltage here, they're receiving the same voltage, so they are not recording any deflection. We don't see any deflection. So this is the isoelectric line. Then as we stimulate the nerve, so here what happens, because of the stimulus, what is stimulus? Stimulus is the energy made free by the change in the external environment. Stimulus can be physical, it can be chemical, it can be electrical. So this stimulus will cause change in the polarity of the membrane. Now here the inside is negative and outside is positive. Here this electrode will record negative and this will record positive. So there is a deflection in the recording, and what we record is the downward. Here what we record is the downward. Here the membrane is depolarized, and here we record the downward stroke or downward recording is there. It's a negative record, and after some time, as this potential is being transmitted to the center of the nerve, here both the electrodes do not record any deflection. Here we get an isoelectric line, which I am not able to draw here much. So here the action potential, the potential comes back to the normal. Membrane potential comes back to normal, and when here what is happening, the potential, this alteration in potential reaches the second electrode. Here again the deflection will be recorded because both electrodes are recording different potentials. Here we again record the potential, and after some time, in this situation, the membrane becomes again polarized. There is no difference between the two electrodes, and then the potential comes back to normal. So here we get this type of potential is known as biphasic, two phases, negative and positive. We are recording two phases. So duration of this isoelectric line, if we record this, is proportional to the speed of conduction of nerve impulse and distance between the recording electrodes. So more the distance between recording electrodes, more will be the isoelectric line, and the speed of conduction of nerve impulse, if it is more, it will be less. Okay, speed of conduction of nerve impulse. Now, what is the advantage of biphasic recording or the extracellular recording? Advantage is that it's comparatively easier to record, and propagation of action potential can be recorded. But this biphasic recording or extracellular recording has its certain drawbacks. Here the graph obtained is variable, and dependent upon the distance between the electrodes and the rate of conduction of impulse of the nerve fiber, it can vary. Moreover, for proper analysis of the action potential cannot be done this way, and the potential difference what we record is comparatively smaller what is exactly actual action potential. So we prefer the monophasic recording or intracellular recording. Intracellular recording or monophasic recording is preferred. Here the action potential is recorded from a single nerve fiber. It is recorded from a single nerve fiber. Here what we do is that we keep one electrode as the indifferent electrode. This is the indifferent electrode, and it is then placed in the extracellular fluid, and the other recording electrode which is placed in the inside of the cell. So the potential difference between the inside and outside electrode of the fiber is measured using a voltmeter. The voltmeter can measure even a small voltages despite extremely high resistance to electrical flow. So what we use is, we do this via micropipette to the tip of the micropipette, which has a lumen diameter of usually less than 1 micrometer and a resistance of more than 1 million ohms. So it has a resistance of more than 1 million ohms. This is connected to a voltmeter or amplifier. This is connected to an amplifier, and then this voltmeter is connected to an amplifier, and then we recorded this further connected to a cathode ray oscilloscope, and then we can get the action potential. Here we get a monophasic action potential. In that we get a biphasic action potential. Here we get a monophasic action potential. The electrode is a silver electrode. Again repeat, it is a micropipette. Micropipette has a diameter of less than 1 micrometer and resistance of more than 1 million ohms, and there are two electrodes. One is indifferent electrodes. We record the potential difference between the two. It is recorded with the voltmeter, and then it is connected to the amplifier, and an amplifier then is further connected to the cathode ray oscilloscope. So final recording is done with the cathode. So what is this cathode ray oscilloscope? You will not be able to see this cathode ray oscilloscope because normally it is already in the inbuilt machines what we use. There is already inbuilt PT. So you should know the principle on what this cathode ray oscilloscope is based. So what is it? It measures the electrical events in a living tissue. What does it have? It has a cathode ray tube. This is a cathode ray tube. It has an electron gun, a fluorescent screen which is coated. This fluorescent screen is coated with a fluorescent material, and which basically records this fluorescent screen, then records the electron which is transmitted from the cathode ray via beam and hits it, and it records the recording. Then we have two sets of electrically charged plates. One is the vertical plates. These plates are vertical plates, or they are placed horizontally above, and they are vertical deflection plates. They are placed horizontally, but they are the vertical plates, they above the electron beam, and then we have the horizontal plates. This vertical plates, they are connected to the electronic amplifier, which is connected it has connected to the electrode, indifferent electrode, and the silver electrode or micro electrode or micro pipette. It amplifies the current which is being recorded, and then we have an electrical stimulator by which we are stimulating the nerve, and then we have the horizontal plates which is connected to the electron sweep current. In this, what we do is, when the electrons these are connected to the sweep generator, when a voltage is applied across these plates, the beam of electrons being negatively charged is attracted towards the positively charged plates and repelled by the negatively charged plates. If we apply sawtooth voltage, that is, the voltage is slowly increased, then suddenly decreased, and then slowly increased, then the electron beam will steadily move towards the positively charged plate. Then suddenly it will move, when the voltage is suddenly decreased, it will move back to the back, and then again move, and then we can record the electron beam is made to record through the fluorescent screen. Then the vertical deflection plates, or the vertical deflection plates, what they do is, these are connected to, as I told you, to the recording electrodes. The potential changes, whatever is being recorded, they are being amplified by the amplifier, and they will be deflected. The voltage changes will be deflected by these vertical deflecting plates, and the magnitude of deflection will be proportional to the potential difference between the two plates. And this action potential is recorded as vertical deflection of the beam of the electrons as it moves through the fluorescent screen of the electrodes. Again repeat. So the electronic amplifier which is receiving the signals, it will give the signals, it is connected to the vertical plates, and depending upon the magnitude of action potential which is being recorded, and these plates, the electron beam will be deflected, and what we record, and then we will record the action potential. So time base is recorded horizontally and voltage changes are recorded vertically. Now coming to action potential. Action potential is rapid, sudden, transitory or temporary changes in the resting membrane potential towards the positive potential which can be propagated. Again repeat, it is the rapid, sudden, transitory or temporary changes in the resting membrane potential towards the positive potential, and this can be propagated. So action potential can be propagated. So this is a momentarily situation which occurs, that it is the resting membrane potential suddenly becomes positive, and depending upon the type of the potential, it comes back to its resting phase, and this action potential can be propagated. So we have multiple type of action potentials. The main one is, which is the commonest one, we generally call by simply action potential also, it is spike potential, because it occurs as a spike, rapid upstroke, rapid downstroke. Then action potential with plateau, that is, action potential occurs, then there is a steady state is reached, it stays for some time, then it comes back to normal. Then rhythmic action potential, that is, the action potential, it upshoots, come back to normal, upshoots, come back to normal. It is a sort of the rhythmic manner. Then we have compound action potential, that is, when the action potential is recorded from a mixed nerve fiber or muscle, we get multiple action potentials, so that is the compound action potential. Now the spike potential or action potential, it has a duration of about 1 millisecond generally, and amplitude is about minus can vary from minus 70 millivolt to plus 35 millivolt. This spike potential is different, can be of different durations in different excitable tissues, depending upon the size, upon the excitability, and amplitude also varies in different tissues. So in an average neuron, the Stanley varies from minus 70 millivolts to plus 35 millivolts. So whenever we apply a stimulus, again repeat, what is stimulus? Stimulus is the energy made free by the change in the external environment of a tissue. So this can be physical, chemical, electrical. So the stimulus can be of three types. It can be threshold stimulus, it can be subthreshold stimulus or subminimal stimulus, or it can be supramaximal or suprathreshold stimulus. Now when we give a subminimal or subthreshold stimulus, that is, the stimulus is not able to generate an action potential, but it will cause certain change in the membrane potential of the cell and slight alteration in resting membrane potential. So up to suppose it can cause up to 6 or 7 millivolt of changes, and still some changes. Suppose this is minus 70 when you are stimulating and giving some stimulus, and it is not able to, you're giving a stimulus, subthreshold stimulus, and this is not going to cause any change in the resting membrane potential. There is slight alteration, but it will not reach the threshold level. It will not reach the threshold level. So if we give a threshold stimulus is a stimulus, or minimal stimulus is a stimulus which is able to generate a response in the form of action potential in the neuron, and in the same is case with the muscle. So here what will happen? We give a stimulus, and the stimulus is a threshold stimulus. It will lead to, this stimulus will cause change in the membrane polarity, reversal in the membrane polarity, and when it reaches a threshold level of about minus 15 millivolt change occurs, that is, it reaches threshold of minus 55, there is sudden upstroke. Sudden upstroke is reached, what we called as the depolarization. We called as the depolarization, or rapid upstroke is reached. And so first we get is upstroke is reached, and this is known as the depolarization, and overshoot is reached. So this was the latent period. We had applied a stimulus here and still no response is generated. Since latent period depends upon the distance between the stimulating electrode and recording electrode, and type and diameter of the nerve fiber. I'll not go in much of the detail while you discussing the different tissues, nerve or muscle. You will come to know exactly what are different reasons for the latent period depending on the type of tissue. Here it depends upon the distance between the stimulating and recording electrodes and type and diameter of the nerve fiber. That is, the thicker the nerve or larger the nerve, more is the conduction velocity. Obviously the latent period will be less. So then after the threshold level is reached, that is the firing level is reached, then there is sudden overshoot, and this is the, it crosses the 0 and reaches up to plus 35 millivolt, and the firing level, this is the phase of depolarization phase. This phase upstroke is the depolarization, pole is the depolarization phase. Then spike potential is reached. After reaching the peak, the depolarization is complete and the phase of repolarization starts, and the potential descends quickly towards the resting phase, and this upstroke and downstroke, it occurs as a spike, so it is known as spike potential. This type of action potential is known as spike potential, and this is approximately, as I told you, the duration is about 1 millisecond, and then after some time the potential becomes, here the potential it slows, gradually starts coming towards the resting membrane potential, and this point is known as after depolarization. This is the part of the repolarization. This is the repolarization, and this is also known as, this part of the repolarization is the after depolarization. Here this slowly, again after some time, we see that the resting membrane potential, it becomes more negative than the resting membrane potential, and this phase is known as after hyperpolarization. So now we can see that the spike potential or the action potential, it has three components. This threshold level or the firing level plus the upstroke is the depolarization. This downstroke plus these after depolarization and after hyperpolarization, these are basically part of the repolarization. This is the part of the repolarization. So what is the molecular basis? We'll be discussing this. Now coming to the ionic basis of the action potential. This was given by Hodgkin and Huxley. They studied this with the help of the voltage clamp technique, and they proposed a Hodgkin-Huxley theory, and according to this, the different molecular events can be explained. So first of all, if you remember, this is the resting phase. This is the resting phase or the polarization phase. During this phase, now we have two main voltage gated channels. One is the voltage gated sodium channel, and the other is the voltage gated potassium channels. This is a voltage gated sodium channels, then we have the voltage gated sodium potassium channels. The voltage gated sodium channel, I discussed in previous lectures that they have two gates. One is the activation gates M gate and inactivation gate H gate. I told you that you need to remember that activation gate will be present on the site which has the higher concentration gradient. Just to remember, so higher concentration of sodium is outside, so the activation gate or M gate are present outside, and the inactivation gate is present inside. And same with case the potassium, because the potassium concentration is more on the inside, so the inactivation gate will be present on the inside of the cell membrane. Now in the resting phase, the polarization phase, we know it occurs because of the potassium diffusion potential, sodium diffusion potential, and sodium potassium pump. In this phase, at this particular moment, when the resting membrane potential is either minus 90 to minus 70 millivolt, there is no change, no opening of the activation gates, because there is no net transfer of ions occurring here. Then this is the resting phase. Now when you give a stimulus, when the stimulus is applied, you are causing slight negativity, your slight alteration of the external environment. What is stimulus? Energy made free. This energy, which will cause slight alteration in the membrane permeability. This is one of the sodium channel. So it will lead to this stimulation inside will become negative. This, when the inside starts becoming negative, that is, it becomes inside starts become positive. That is, there is reversal of polarity. Inside was negative, it starts becoming more positive. So what will happen? Few of the sodium channels will open up, because these activation gates, they open up when there is reversal of polarity. When the sodium channels, they open up, this will lead to entry of sodium, positively charged sodium in. When positively charged sodium, it starts moving in, the inside starts becoming positive, more positive, less negative. So the potential will move, there is reversal of polarity, potential moves towards the positive, as we see the upstroke is there. So here some of the sodium channels are open. Here what is happening, more and more sodium channels, they open up, because inside becomes more positive, more sodium channel open, finally a stage will occur when most of the sodium channels, they open up, and suddenly a large quantity of sodium moves in, there is upstroke, it becomes positive, and then at this particular moment, the inactivation gates of the potassium, they are closed, and inactivation gate of the sodium, they are open. Now what happens during the repolarization? During the repolarization, we can see that here the upstroke is reached, plus 35 is reached. So after about some time, so what is that time called? What is the time after some time means? Here the inactivation gates of, after a fraction of a millisecond, the inactivation gate, they are slower to close. So they have started closing during the membrane depolarization, but they take a lot of time. That is, after the fraction of a millisecond, they close, and they close now. They close. So they close here, and at that particular time, that is after a fraction of a millisecond, the inactivation gates of the potassium, they also open up. They started opening, but they open up because Now the potential has reached the towards is more positive, more positive. Now what will happen? Potassium will start moving out. Now no sodium is, no positive ion is moving in, but positive ions are moving out. So what will happen now? The inside becomes, now start becomes more negative. It starts moving towards the resting membrane potential, and action potential will return to, it will try to come back to normal. So here this is, then we reach the repolarization phase has started because of this. So now as we see that this is the repolarization has occurred, and then there is a phase in after the repolarization, what is known as after depolarization. Here there is slow, here this was very rapid downstroke, here it is a slow downstroke, So why this occur? That is the efflux buildup of potassium ions. There is buildup of potassium ions inside the, this is outside the cell membrane, and there is less of the electrical gradient which is responsible for initial rapid diffusion. It declines. The electrical gradient, it declines, and this phase is known as after depolarization. After depolarization. Why we call this after depolarization? Because initially it was recorded in the biphasic action potential, so it was named such and it remained so. But it is not exactly depolarization. Here it is rather, it is here it is after repolarization. Then this potential becomes more negative, and it is called as after hyperpolarization. After hyperpolarization. So here why does it occur? Because there is the potassium ions keep on moving out, because there is persistent opening of potassium channels. More potassium now moves out, and the potential becomes more negative, and sodium potassium pump, it also have started moving 3 sodium out and 2 potassium in. So this is the reason of the after hyperpolarization. Now why there is failure to reach the equilibrium potential of sodium, which is 61 millivolt, or excessive overshoot, that is we reach plus 35. Beyond that, most of the time we don't reach to that potential. We should have reached to plus 61 millivolt, because now the membrane is more diffusible to sodium ions, but because there is inactivation of sodium channels. The sodium channels have closed, the inactivation gates have closed, and the intracellular positivity repels positively charged ions also, because the inside becomes now the positive, more sodium ions are repelled to enter it, and moreover thirdly there is efflux of the potassium ions. There is efflux of positively charged potassium ions. Now why there is initiation of action potential? Why there is action potential initiates? You know that it is because of the stimulus, and this is given Hodgkin cycle, which is called at Hodgkin cycle or positive feedback spiral. We have learned in the positive feedback, while giving the examples of positive feedback and negative feedback, we said that initiation of action potential or entry of sodium is one of the positive feedbacks. So how does it do? There was stimulus. This stimulus caused an alteration in the energy. It was energy made free. It causes alteration in the membrane polarity slightly. It lead to opening of few of the sodium channels. These sodium channels entered, caused membrane depolarization. Membrane depolarization caused more sodium channels to open up. More sodium channels opened up, more sodium entered, more membrane depolarization, more opening of sodium channels, more membrane depolarization, more opening of sodium channel, more membrane depolarization, more opening of sodium channels, more membrane depolarization, till almost all the sodium channels are opened up. So we get this upstroke. So this is a positive feedback. Now, so this is the reason for cessation of action potential. Stimulus is the main reason, but what does stimulus do? So then threshold for initiation of action potential. So why we reach this threshold? This will be there when number of sodium ions entering will be greater than the number of potassium ions leaving, because you know, because of those leak channels, potassium keeps on moving out. But here what is happening? number of positively charged sodium ions entering is more as compared to number of positively charged potassium ions leaving, and there is sudden increase in the voltage from minus 15 to 30 millivolt, because here some of the sodium channels have opened, here large number of sodium channels have opened. This called a massive change in the voltage, which lead to the threshold level and action potential and firing of the action potential. So what is the role of other ions? There is not, the other ions do not play much of the major roles, but some there are impermeant ions and ions present in like protein molecules, organic phosphate compound, sulfate compound, because we know that they are predominant in the intracellular atmosphere. So they play a role because they lead to, they are impermeant, they are exerted Donan's equilibrium, and they are responsible for maintaining the membrane, resting membrane potential. They are not responsible in action potential. But in calcium ions, the cell membrane has calcium pumps. We discussed when we talk of calcium pumps. The calcium pump is present in all the cell membrane as well as the intracellular organelles. They create a gradient of 10,000 fold. The intracellular calcium is about 10 to raised to power 7 molar, and extracellular concentration 10 raised to power minus 3 molar concentration. So there is a 10-fold difference. This gradient has to be created, and in certain cells, in certain like smooth muscles, certain smooth muscles, and in the cardiac muscle cells, different, there are voltage gated calcium channels and calcium sodium channels which are responsible for generation of the action potential. So when we discuss the action potential with plateau and different action potentials while discussing smooth muscles, so you'll be this will be taught in the lectures in the class for different types of action potentials in the nerve and muscles. So then you'll come to know about this type of importance of these ions. One very important role of extracellular fluid calcium is concentration is on sodium channels. This is very important. So whenever there is decrease in calcium concentration, there is increase in sodium channel activation, and this leads to increase in membrane potential. And what happens is that the nerve fiber, they become highly excitable and may discharge repeatedly on stimulation. Why does this occur? This occurs when there is decrease in calcium concentration, what we call as tetany. The reason is because in the normal circumstances, calcium is positively charged. It binds to the external surface of sodium channels, altering its conformation, and it becomes difficult for the sodium channels to enter. So, but when there is, this will occur when the membrane potential is at the resting level. But when there is alteration in the resting membrane potential, so what happens? The calcium, they are positively charged, they are dislodged, and then the sodium channels are activated. So whenever there is decrease in the calcium, there is increase in the sodium channel activation, and when it is increased, the reverse will happen, that is vice versa. Now what is the role of chloride ions? Chloride ions, because it's the equilibrium potential of chloride ions about minus 70 millivolts, they keep on leaking during resting conditions, and the rate of diffusion of chloride ions is about one half of that of potassium diffusion. They do not play any role in action potential. In the resting stage, the membrane is negative. So, moreover, the minus 70 millivolt is the same as the diffusion potential of chloride. So, no net entry of chloride ions occur. The inside of intracellular chloride concentration is about 3 to 4 milliequivalents per liter, and extracellular is about 103 milliequivalents per liter. So, whenever there is mild alteration in membrane potential, so what does chloride do? So, suppose if the membrane potential becomes minus 70 to minus 50, so what will happen? Chloride ions will start moving in and will try to neutralize, until unless there is the stimulus is strong. It is a threshold stimulus. It causes drastic change in the membrane potential. So it may play a slight role in the slight alteration in the membrane permeability, but it will not be, so it may delay the action potential, but it will not be responsible for generation of the action potential. So now let us revise. So in short, in the action potential, in the resting stage, the potassium ion, let us revise the action potential. In the resting phase, the potassium ion conductance is about 50 to 100 times greater than that of sodium ions through the potassium sodium leak channels. So the resting membrane potential, there is no net alteration in the polarity. Then at the onset of action potential, sodium channels get activated. There is 5,000 fold increase in sodium conductance instantaneously. I discuss why. So after a fraction of a millisecond, there is an activation of sodium channel and opening of the potassium channels, and then rapid, what will happen? Sodium will stop entering, potassium will start moving out, and this leads to this will lead to repolarization, and then with slight delay, because potassium keeps on moving in, so there is slight delay, so we get the after hyperpolarization. Now I think I expect you to know what is membrane potential, what is diffusion potential, what is resting membrane potential, what is Goldman equation, what is Gibbs-Donan equilibrium, what is action potential, different types of action potential, what is the molecular basis of action potential. So rest we'll be discussing in, we'll be revising it, and then we'll conducting the assessment part. So if you have any queries, feel free to ask me. Thank you.